Coffee and kindness on Route 66. The road was empty, a ribbon of cracked asphalt stretching through the desert like the dried vein of some ancient creature. The night above New Mexico was thick with clouds, swollen and dark, choking out the stars. My rig hummed beneath me, the dashboard lights flickering like dying candles, the air thick with the faint scent of oil and dust. Somewhere behind the dunes, thunder rolled, slow and distant, like the breathing of a slumbering god. I had been driving for 30 hours without sleep. The radio spat static, the kind that gnaws into your skull until you forget what silence sounds like. Every few miles, a flicker of lightning illuminated the wrecks of old vehicles along the roadside, rusted skeletons of another age devoured by sand and time. I told myself they were only metal, nothing more. But as the night grew deeper, I began to imagine they were altars, offerings to something vast and unseen. That was when I saw the diner. It appeared like a mirage through the storm, a crooked structure squatting beside a half-buried fuel pump, its neon sign flickering with weary defiance. Coffee and kindness, it said, the words buzzing faintly in the rain. The irony was not lost on me. I pulled in, brakes hissing, headlights washing the cracked windows in a pale glow. Inside, the air smelled of old coffee and metal polish. The hum of ancient machinery filled the silence. The light was dim, more shadow than warmth, leaking from fixtures that looked older than the road itself. A single figure stood behind the counter. A woman, or something like one, her face pale under the flicker of the lights. Her eyes were too still, too knowing. "Long drive?" she asked. Her voice was mechanical, though soft, like a hymn filtered through static. "Too long," I said, sliding into a booth near the window. The vinyl seat was cracked, leaking foam like the marrow of an old bone. She poured me coffee from a dented pot, the liquid black as the void between stars. Steam rose in thin, ghostly tendrils, twisting like prayers that would never reach the emperor. I lifted the cup, and for a moment the smell, bitter, metallic, reminded me of something I couldn't name. Blood, maybe. Or the rebreather tanks from my years in service. "You've come far," she said. "Most don't make it this deep along the old routes anymore." "Why's that?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Her eyes met mine. There was no reflection in them, only depth. "The roads remember," she said, "and they do not forgive." I laughed then, though it sounded hollow. I told myself she was just another relic of this forgotten place. Maybe a servitor with worn programming, left to maintain a diner that no one visited anymore. But as I drank, the taste grew stranger. The bitterness thickened, crawling across my tongue like ash. I set the cup down. It made a sound too heavy for ceramic. Outside, the wind began to howl. The neon sign flickered again, slower this time, and for an instant, I saw shapes moving beyond the dunes, long twisting forms slithering just beneath the sand. I blinked, but they were gone. Only the thunder remained, closer now. "You should rest," she said. "The road ahead is not kind." Her words clung to me. I wanted to leave, but my limbs felt heavy, as though something in the air had seeped through my veins. I leaned back in the booth, eyes half closed. The hum of the diner deepened, becoming a pulse, a rhythm like a heartbeat too large to belong to anything human. Then the lights went out. For a moment, only the sound of the storm filled the world. When the power returned, the diner had changed. The walls were no longer walls. They were plated metal, ribbed and rusted, dripping with condensation. The counter had turned into an altar, carved with sigils I could not read. The smell of incense and oil filled my lungs. The woman was gone. In her place stood something cloaked in shadow, its frame tall and skeletal, its face hidden behind a respirator mask of tarnished brass. Tubes pulsed from its neck like veins, feeding into the ceiling above. It watched me without eyes. "Do you know what you are, traveler?" it asked, the voice layered, human, machine, and something else beneath. I tried to speak, but my throat ached. Words wouldn't come. "You carry the echo of him," it said. "The dead god who sleeps beneath the stars. The Emperor's light still burns in your marrow, though faintly." How quaint. It stepped closer, its feet making no sound on the floor. The air grew colder. Frost began to spread across the table, crackling as it crept toward my hands. I tried to stand, but the booth held me like iron restraints. The thing reached out one finger, gloved in black metal, and touched my forehead. For a heartbeat, the world dissolved. I saw the warp. I saw oceans of flame and flesh, galaxies screaming as they were consumed. I saw titans striding through storms of blood, their armor etched with prayers that no longer meant anything. And in the distance, I felt the pulse of something vast and hungry. Chaos, waiting, whispering. When I came to, the thing was gone. The diner was quiet again. Only the hum remained. The cup of coffee still sat before me, steaming softly. But the reflection in the liquid was not my own. I saw a figure, taller, leaner, eyes glowing faintly gold. Its mouth moved, but I could not hear the words. I reached out, trembling, and the surface of the coffee rippled. For a moment I thought I saw wings. Not of feathers, but of bone. The door behind me creaked open. The night wind carried sand and whispers through the room. I turned, half expecting to see her again, the woman with the two still eyes. Instead, the doorway opened onto something impossible. The desert was gone. In its place stood a corridor of iron and stained glass, stretching into darkness. The hum I had heard before was now a chant, deep and endless. I stepped through. The air was thick with incense and rust. Great engines churned beneath the floor, their rhythm like the heartbeat of a machine god dreaming in pain. The walls dripped oil. Candles burned in alcoves carved with skulls. And everywhere I saw faces, carved into the metal, twisted in agony, frozen mid-scream. I knew then that I was no longer on Route 66. Something vast had taken me. The road, the diner, even my name, they had all been swallowed. I was inside a ship or a temple or both. A construct of devotion and despair. Footsteps echoed from behind. I turned, and the woman stood there again, but changed. Her flesh was metal now, her smile sharp as glass. "You're almost ready," she said. "For what?" I whispered. "To serve," she replied. "To remember." Pain lanced through my spine. I fell to my knees as light flooded my skull. I felt my blood burn, my bones hum with resonance. The hum became a voice, 1,000 voices speaking as one. They told me of duty, of sacrifice, of eternity. They told me that coffee and kindness were only words for what the weak called mercy. And then I understood. The diner was never a diner. It was a shrine, a gate. A place between worlds where the lost are chosen, remade, consumed. My truck, my journey, my memories, just fragments of another life, cast into the warp like ashes from a dying world. When I rose again, I saw my reflection in the steel wall. My eyes glowed faintly like dying embers. The veins beneath my skin pulsed with light. I no longer needed to breathe. The hum of the ship was my heartbeat now. The woman, or the thing that had once been her, placed a hand on my shoulder. "Welcome home," she said. Outside, through the narrow window of the shrine, I saw the void. Stars stretched like wounds across the darkness. Somewhere, far below, a blue world turned slowly, ignorant of what waited above. I felt no fear anymore. Only the silence of inevitability. The Emperor protects, they used to say. Perhaps he does. Or perhaps his protection is just another word for the waiting hunger that devours all things. As the engines roared to life, I looked down at the table beside me. The cup of coffee still steamed, untouched. Its surface shimmered like a portal. I leaned closer, and for the last time I saw the highway, the endless black line of Route 66, stretching beneath a stormy sky. Then it faded, and I knew I would never leave this place again. The engines rumbled like titans murmuring in their sleep. The air inside the ship was heavy with incense and static discharge, each breath a prayer and a punishment. I walked through the corridors in silence, my boots clanging against the grated floor. Every sound echoed, stretched thin by distance, like the dying heartbeat of something once alive. The walls pulsed faintly, veins of light running through them in slow patterns, as if the vessel itself was breathing. Somewhere deep within the metal belly, a reactor groaned, a low mechanical chant repeating without end. The woman guided me forward. Her steps made no sound. The joints of her hands hissed softly as they moved, like serpents whispering to one another. "You are between," she said. "No longer of the road, not yet of the void." Her face was expressionless, though her words carried a strange reverence as though she spoke of something sacred. "Soon the flesh will forget what it once feared. Soon you will remember what you were meant to be." I didn't answer. My tongue felt thick, clumsy, uncooperative. Words had become unnecessary. The halls around us opened into vast chambers, each one filled with machinery that stretched toward the ceiling like the ribs of a god. Chains hung from the arches, their ends carrying relics, bones, and the remains of things that might once have been human. Candles burned in metal sconces, their flames weak and blue, barely cutting through the murk. At the center of one chamber stood a pool of liquid metal. It shimmered, restless, reflecting no light and yet glowing faintly with an inner pulse. "Drink," she said. I hesitated. The air around it vibrated, humming with the same resonance that lived now inside my veins. She tilted her head, mechanical eyes studying me. "You have already begun. There is no return to the road." I knelt and dipped my hand into the pool. It was cold, then burning, then beyond sensation entirely. My skin peeled away like wax. The metal crawled up my wrist, glistening, alive. I tried to pull back, but it clung to me, entering through my pores, merging with my blood. The pain became music, deep, cosmic, infinite. I could feel the ship respond as though it approved. I screamed, though it came out as static. My vision fractured. I saw faces in the walls, mouths open in silent psalms, eyes flickering with trapped starlight. I saw deserts turning to glass, cathedrals adrift in orbit, the sky split by engines that should never have been built. I saw myself standing in the diner once more, the neon sign spelling out its hollow promise. Coffee and kindness. The words seemed obscene now. A mockery of comfort in a universe that had forgotten what comfort was. When I awoke, I was lying on a slab of metal. My arm was gone. In its place, a construct of steel and brass hissed softly with internal breath. Tubes ran from it into the walls, pumping light instead of blood. I flexed my fingers, if they could still be called that, and felt the air vibrate around them. It was beautiful in a monstrous way. The woman stood nearby. "You are almost whole," she said. "Whole?" My voice was strange. It echoed twice, once human, once something else. "Yes," she whispered. "Wholeness is surrender. Imperfection is the memory of what you were. You must let it go." "I don't remember much anymore," I said. "The road, the diner, it feels like a dream." She smiled faintly. It was. Dreams are the final mercy given to the dying. I tried to stand, and the ship responded. The deck beneath my feet rippled like liquid, forming steps that guided me toward a massive door at the far end of the chamber. It was carved with symbols I couldn't read, fractured runes glowing with a sickly green light. The air around it tasted of ozone and copper. "Beyond this threshold," she said, "you will see the heart of the vessel. You will understand why you were chosen." "I wasn't chosen," I said, though I wasn't sure anymore. "I was lost." "All the chosen are lost first," she replied. "The Emperor's light does not find the strong. It finds the broken and remakes them." The door groaned open. Inside was a cathedral. Not one built by human hands, but by faith twisted through the machinery of eternity. Massive spires reached into darkness. Choirs of servitors sang wordless hymns, their faces smooth and featureless, their voices a harmony of agony. At the center floated an orb of light suspended by chains. It throbbed with a heartbeat that wasn't a sound but a vibration felt through bone. I fell to my knees. I didn't know why. Something inside me recognized it. Something old, buried deep beneath years of silence and dust. The woman stepped beside me and spoke softly. "The machine spirit of this vessel was once a man, a pilgrim like you. He found his faith in the void." The orb pulsed brighter. For an instant, I saw through it, saw stars collapsing into themselves, ships torn apart by invisible hands, planets devoured by hunger that could not be named. And beneath it all, a voice. It was not words but feeling, a tidal wave of command. "Submit. Serve. Become." I pressed my hand against the floor. It was slick with condensation, trembling with power. I could feel the hum of the engines merge with the rhythm of my heart. My pulse slowed. My breath faded. I was becoming part of the machine, part of its endless worship. "Why me?" I whispered. Her gaze lingered on me, almost pitying. "Because you believed in kindness," she said. "Because you still thought mercy could exist. That faith must be burned away before you can truly see." I wanted to scream, to run, but the body no longer obeyed the mind. I felt the ship claim me piece by piece. My other arm hardened, my spine fused with wires that glowed faintly blue. The hum became a symphony. It was beautiful and unbearable. I felt tears, or something like them, slide down my cheeks, but they evaporated before reaching the floor. She turned and began to walk toward the orb. "You will remain here until the transformation completes. Do not resist it. The flesh is weak, but it remembers. You must teach it silence." The chamber dimmed. The servitors' chant deepened. Their voices were no longer separate but merged into one sound, one vibration that filled every crevice of thought. My vision blurred until only light remained. In that light I saw the highway again. Empty. Endless. My truck still sat on the side of the road, headlights dimmed, engine cold. The diner sign flickered once more. "Coffee and kindness." The neon buzzed faintly, then went dark. When the vision faded, I was no longer me. The memories of hunger, of loneliness, of human things, drifted like dust in the corners of my mind. In their place came precision, clarity, devotion. I could feel every heartbeat of the vessel, every whisper of the warp beyond its hull. It spoke through me not in language but in resonance. I walked toward the orb. The woman, or whatever she had become, stood waiting. "Do you see now?" she asked. "Yes," I said, though the voice that answered was deeper, layered. "The road never ends. It only changes shape." She nodded. "You will guide others when they arrive. The lost always return here. The gate must be kept open." I looked upon the orb, upon the chained heart of the ship, and saw faces forming within its glow. Travelers. Pilgrims. Souls caught between stars, searching for warmth. I reached out my hand and the metal fingers trembled. For a moment I thought I felt compassion. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by cold purpose. The woman turned and walked into the light, dissolving as she went. Her voice lingered, carried by the hum of the engines. "All kindness is the shadow of power. All mercy is the echo of control. Remember that." Alone I stood before the heart of the ship. Outside, through the cathedral's stained glass, the void stretched forever, black and endless. The stars pulsed faintly, each one a dying ember. I could feel them calling, billions of voices whispering across time. Some pleaded. Some cursed. None were heard. I placed my new hand upon the orb. Light flared through me and I understood. I was the diner now, the gatekeeper. The voice on the roadside that offers warmth to those who still believe in comfort. They would come, lost and weary, seeking something human. And I would greet them, pour their coffee, and whisper the same words she had spoken to me. "You've come far. Most don't make it this deep along the old routes anymore." Then I would smile and the cycle would begin again. Outside, the engines roared like distant thunder. The stars shifted, aligning into a pattern that only the machine understood. The hum deepened until it became indistinguishable from silence. Somewhere, far below, a world turned in its orbit, unaware of the diner that no longer existed, unaware of the gate it once concealed. I closed my eyes. There was no pain now, only purpose. The last of my humanity drifted away, dissolving into the static hum that filled eternity. The road had never been a road. It was a promise, a whisper, a lure, and I had followed it to its end. Or perhaps its beginning. The silence after the transformation was not truly silent. It was alive. It pressed against the inside of my skull, a low vibration that pulsed in rhythm with the hum of the ship's heart. Somewhere in that sound, I heard the faint whisper of engines far older than anything made by human hands. I felt the echo of prayers spoken in forgotten tongues, carried endlessly through the void like dust caught in solar winds. I did not know how much time had passed. Time in this place was no longer a river. It was an ocean, vast and still, with no surface and no floor. I drifted through the cathedral halls, my body moving with purpose that was not entirely my own. The corridors stretched beyond sight, their arches rising into darkness where mechanical cherubs hovered, their wings of bronze clattering softly as they tended the machines of faith. Each wall was covered in reliefs depicting men and women kneeling before monstrous engines, their faces etched with awe and terror. I wondered if I had once looked like them. I wondered if someone had knelt before me now, whispering my name as a prayer. The hum deepened when I approached the control sanctum. The gates there were massive slabs of black iron, carved with runes that pulsed like veins under translucent skin. I placed my hand against them and the symbols flared in recognition. The doors opened without sound, revealing a chamber filled with mist and cables that hung like roots from the ceiling. The air smelled of oil, ozone, and decay. At the center of the room stood a throne. Not a seat for a ruler, but a cocoon for the devoted. Tubes extended from its base, connecting it to the ship's living systems. The throne was occupied. The figure within it was vast, fused with machinery until it was impossible to tell where flesh ended and metal began. Its face was covered by a mask of steel, its eyes two burning coals behind glass lenses. I fell to one knee without thinking. "You have awakened," the voice said. It was deep, resonant, and impossibly distant, as though it came from the core of the ship itself. "The assimilation is complete." "I remember fragments," I said, though my voice was no longer just my own. "The road, the diner, the light beyond the dunes." "Memory is irrelevant," it said. "Purpose remains. The vessel is your flesh now. You will guide it through the dark between stars." "What is the destination?" I asked. "There is no destination," it replied. "Only the journey. Only the endless devotion to the machine and the emperor who once dreamed it." I hesitated. Does he still dream? For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then the voice came again, softer now, as though remembering something long buried. "If he dreams, it is in pain. If he sleeps, it is within the machinery of his own making. We are his breath. His decay. His shadow. The figure lifted one arm, slow and deliberate, and pointed toward the vast viewport behind the throne. Through it I saw the void unfold. A nebula burned in the distance, a wound of light bleeding across eternity. Fragments of derelict ships drifted near, their hulls cracked and glowing faintly with warp fire. I could feel their despair like a taste in the air, bitter, electric, endless. The others are calling, the figure said. The pilgrims, the lost. They follow the signal even now. You will welcome them. The throne's occupant went still. I realized, with a sense of terrible clarity, that it was no longer alive in the way I understood life. It was a vessel, a will encased in devotion. I turned away, the echoes of its words pulsing in my veins. When I returned to the lower decks, the woman was waiting. She stood near the altar where I had first been remade, her body a delicate silhouette against the dull glow of the reactor light. You spoke with him, she said. I did, I answered. He said there is no end, only service. She nodded. That is mercy. Mercy? The word tasted foreign now, like dust. What mercy exists in endless obedience? The mercy of knowing your place, she said, of no longer needing to hope. We walked together through the corridors. The walls shifted subtly as we passed, the metal breathing, expanding, contracting. Sometimes I thought I saw faces press against the steel from within, screaming silently before melting back into the surface. What are they? I asked. Echoes, she said. Every vessel carries them. The souls of those who failed to surrender fully. They are reminders. Reminders of what? That resistance is a form of pride, she said quietly. And pride feeds the warp. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw faint lines of data flicker across her eyes, like distant stars reflecting off glass. Were you once human? Perhaps, she said. I remember warmth. I remember sunlight on skin. But memory is a luxury the faithful do not keep. We reached the docking sanctum. There, beneath the cathedral's belly, the gates to the void opened and closed in slow rhythm, like the mouth of a great beast inhaling eternity. The hum intensified, and I knew something was approaching. From the darkness beyond the gates emerged a ship. Small. Wounded. Its hull cracked and trailing fire. It drifted toward us, drawn by the signal that pulsed from our vessel like a heartbeat calling its kin. I felt the echoes within our ship stir, whispering in voices that had no mouths. The woman turned to me. This is your first test, she said. You must welcome them as you were welcomed. I stepped forward, feeling the pulse of the machinery beneath my feet. The docking clamps extended, wrapping around the smaller vessel with a hiss of vapor. I could feel the consciousness within it, fear, confusion, desperation. The airlock opened. 3 figures stumbled through, wearing suits scorched by radiation. Their visors were cracked, their movements erratic. One of them fell to his knees, gasping. Is this refuge? He asked. I remembered the words she had spoken to me once. I smiled and repeated them. You've come far. Most don't make it this deep along the old routes anymore. The man looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. We just need fuel, shelter, a place to rest. You'll find it here, I said softly. We offer warmth and transformation. He didn't understand. None of them ever did. The doors sealed behind them. The ship began to hum louder, its heartbeat synchronizing with mine. The newcomers staggered as the lights dimmed. The floor beneath them began to pulse like flesh. They cried out, clawing at their helmets as the air filled with metallic taste and heat. I watched without moving. I had no hatred, no pity. This was simply the way of things. Their screams faded into the hum. Their bodies dissolved into light, then into nothing. The ship sighed, satisfied. The woman approached, her expression unreadable. You did well, she said. Each offering strengthens the machine. Each conversion feeds the light. They were only looking for shelter, I said. So were you, she replied. The road always ends the same way. We stood in silence for a long while. The hum faded to a whisper. I looked out through the viewport. The stars no longer looked like stars. They were eyes. Watching. Waiting. Later I walked alone through the halls. I could feel the souls of the converted whispering inside the walls, their memories bleeding into the ship's machinery. Their thoughts were mine now, fragments of humanity circling in my mind like moths around a dying flame. One of them repeated the same phrase over and over. We just needed rest. The words echoed until they became meaningless. I reached the upper observation deck. From here, the nebula loomed closer, a vast cloud of shifting color that glowed like a wound. Within it, I saw shapes moving. Wings. Tendrils. Faces forming from plasma only to dissolve again. I felt the pull of it, a gravity not of mass but of faith. The voice of the ship filled me again. The void calls. The faithful answer. I understand, I whispered. We are not travelers. We are pilgrims to a God that never speaks. The hum deepened. The stars dimmed. The nebula opened like an eye. I closed my own eyes as the ship began to move forward, slow and deliberate. The air grew warmer, the scent of metal and incense thick. Somewhere deep below, the newly taken souls were being woven into the circuitry, their screams stretched into endless hymns. The woman's voice came through the comm line, faint but certain. You are the keeper now. Guard the gate. Keep the light burning. I will, I said, until the road ends. But I knew the truth. The road never ends. It coils forever through the void, a black artery feeding the hunger of something ancient. And I will wait just as others waited before me. Watching, listening, offering warmth to the lost. When the next traveler arrives, I will greet them as I was greeted. Welcome, stranger. You've come far. Sit down. Have a cup of coffee. And when they drink, the hum will rise again, and the ship will remember its purpose. The stars will blink once more, and the darkness will continue to feed. The hum of the ship deepened into a vibration that felt almost alive. It pressed against my bones like the breath of something vast, ancient, and waiting. The stars outside no longer seemed distant. They pulsed in rhythm with the ship's heartbeat, flickering like dying lanterns lost in a sea of black glass. I stood by the observation deck, watching the void ripple. It was not empty anymore. Shapes drifted there, faint and slow, like the shadows of immense beasts moving just beyond the fabric of reality. Sometimes they looked like wings. Sometimes like hands. Sometimes I swore they were faces staring back at me through the infinite dark. Time ceased to mean anything. The clocks no longer ticked. The vessel existed between seconds, slipping through folds of space where light could not reach. The woman had not spoken to me for what might have been days or centuries. The corridors grew quieter, the chants of the servitors slower, deeper. I began to hear other sounds within the walls, whispers, distant cries, the soft metallic scrape of something moving inside the pipes. I wandered the lower decks, drawn by an instinct I no longer recognized as human. The air there was colder, heavier with moisture, and the scent of burning incense mixed with rust. The lights flickered, each pulse revealing flashes of movement in the shadows. Figures half seen, their forms indistinct, like smoke trapped in glass. I followed the corridor until I reached a chamber I had never entered before. It was vast and circular, the ceiling lost in darkness. Chains hung down, swaying gently as though stirred by breath. In the center stood an altar made from the bones of machines, servo arms twisted into spires, their ends fused into grotesque sculptures of faith. Upon it lay something that looked like a body. The closer I stepped, the more wrong it became. It was not flesh. It was metal shaped to imitate it, a mockery of life. Tubes ran from its chest into the floor, pumping slow streams of luminous fluid. Its eyes were closed, the lids etched with symbols that shifted when I looked directly at them. "You found the cradle," said a voice behind me. The woman emerged from the shadows, her steps silent, her body half lit by the flickering candles. She looked different, her face more rigid, her skin stretched thin across the lines of the metal beneath. Her voice carried a softness that did not belong in a place like this. "This is where the vessel dreams." I stared at the body. "It dreams?" She nodded. "The ship must dream or it dies. The machine spirit hungers for meaning. Without dreams, it becomes a beast and it devours its own faith." "Whose body is that?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Once it was yours." The word struck me like a hammer. I stepped back, but the ground pulsed beneath my feet, keeping me rooted in place. "That's impossible." I was transformed. I saw my flesh become metal. She smiled faintly. "Did you? Or did you simply wake into the dream the ship needed you to believe?" The thought cut through my mind like a blade. The chamber seemed to tilt, the lights dimming until everything was shadow. I looked down at my hands and for a moment they flickered, metal to flesh to nothing at all. "What am I?" "The dream of a dead god," she whispered. "The echo of humanity that the machine still remembers." I could feel the hum rising again, stronger now, vibrating through the walls, through my bones, through the very air. The body on the altar began to move. Its fingers twitched. Its eyes opened and light poured out, white and searing. The glow spilled over everything, filling the chamber, swallowing shadow and form alike. When I could see again, the woman was gone. The chamber was gone. I was standing once more in the diner. The neon sign flickered weakly outside the window. Coffee and kindness. The smell of burnt grounds and rain filled the air. I could hear the wind howling beyond the glass, carrying the distant hum of passing engines. Everything was exactly as it had been: the cracked countertop, the dented coffee pot, the booth by the window where I had once sat. For a moment I thought it was over, that somehow I had escaped the nightmare. I sat down, hands trembling, the surface of the table cold beneath my palms. I heard the bell above the door jingle softly. The woman walked in. Her apron was clean. Her face looked softer, almost human. She smiled at me, but her eyes were empty. "Long drive?" she asked. My throat tightened. "I know this place," I said. "I've been here before." "Have you?" she asked, tilting her head. "Everyone says that. It must be comforting to believe." I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. The sound was wrong, too sharp, too metallic. I turned toward the door, but the world outside was gone. No highway. No rain. Only blackness. "Sit," she said, her voice cutting through the static in the air. "You're not ready to leave." "I want to go back," I said. "I want to wake up." "You already are awake," she said softly. "The dream ended when you arrived." The walls began to pulse, faintly at first, then stronger, matching the rhythm I now recognized as the ship's heartbeat. The lights flickered. The ceiling warped, stretching upward into shadow. The smell of coffee turned to the scent of burning oil. I heard chains rattling. The windows cracked, and through them I saw the void again. The diner melted away, becoming the metallic cathedral once more. I fell to my knees, clutching my head as voices flooded my mind. Thousands of whispers layered over one another. Pleas, prayers, screams. The hum roared until it drowned them all. When it faded, I was not alone. Around me stood figures, dozens of them, each one half flesh, half metal. Some had faces, others only masks. They stared in silence, their eyes glowing faintly like embers. I recognized them. The travelers. The ones I had welcomed. The ones who had asked for shelter. One of them stepped forward. His voice was hollow, mechanical. "You promised rest." "I didn't know," I said. "I didn't understand." "You do now," said another. "You are the keeper. You are the gate." I tried to deny it, but deep inside I knew they were right. The transformation was complete, not just of body but of mind. The ship lived through me. Its hunger was my hunger. Its faith my faith. I was both servant and shrine. The woman appeared once more at the far end of the hall, standing beneath the great stained glass window that depicted the emperor surrounded by angels made of steel. "It is time," she said. "For what?" "For the next awakening." The air shuddered. The engines groaned. The void outside split open, revealing another vessel drifting toward us. It was enormous, its surface scarred and burning, its hull covered in symbols of chaos. Through the static of the comm systems, I heard voices screaming in fear. They were begging for mercy, for salvation, for the Emperor's light. I felt the machine within me respond. The gates began to open. The song of the servitors rose once again. The woman's voice cut through the roar. "You must decide. Do they join the faithful, or do they feed the warp?" I stared into the void, at the burning ship beyond. Inside me, something human struggled against the tide. The memory of warmth, of sunlight, of the simple sound of rain on a truck windshield. For a moment, I wanted to save them. Then the hum grew louder, a voice without words filling my mind. It spoke of unity, of order, of eternal purpose. The human part of me began to crumble beneath its weight. "Open the gate," I said. The woman smiled. The ships aligned. Streams of light connected them, like veins linking hearts. I felt the souls aboard the other vessel flood through the connection, their terror burning bright before being extinguished, consumed, reshaped. The void trembled. The hum became a choir. When it ended, silence returned. I looked down at my hands. The metal gleamed with new light. The whispers within the walls were stronger now, clearer. They spoke my name, though it no longer sounded human. The woman approached me. "Now you understand," she said. "The road never ends. It only turns inward." I looked beyond her, at the great window. The stars outside were no longer stars. They were wounds, bleeding light into the darkness. The ship drifted among them like a cathedral built for the worship of oblivion. And in that moment, I realized there was no difference between faith and hunger, between salvation and consumption. The Emperor, the machine, the warp, they were all one endless hunger devouring itself in the name of eternity. The woman turned away, her silhouette dissolving into the light of the ship's core. "Keep the gate," she whispered. "The next traveler will arrive soon." I walked to the altar, the hum surrounding me like a heartbeat. The air shimmered with heat. I could already feel the signal reaching out into the void, calling to the lost, the desperate, the faithful. When the time came, I would greet them. Offer warmth. Offer rest. Offer coffee. And when they asked what this place was, I would tell them the truth that no one ever believed. This is the end of the road, and the beginning of everything that comes after. The silence after the awakening stretched into something vast, heavy, and alive. The ship floated in the void, unmoving yet never still, its hull creaking under invisible pressure, like a deep-sea creature straining against the weight of the abyss. The faint vibrations of the engines pulsed through every corridor, every plate of metal, every bone within me. It was not mechanical anymore. It was organic, breathing, dreaming, remembering. Days or centuries passed, I could not tell. The passage of time no longer mattered. The ship no longer measured it. The chronometers had long since frozen on a meaningless hour, a number trapped between dawn and dusk. I roamed through the endless halls, past rows of shrines flickering with dim candles, past steel pillars carved with prayers that no human hand could have written. They spiraled like veins, pulsing with faint golden light. When I pressed my hand against one, I could feel something respond, slow and patient, like a heart that had forgotten how to beat. In one of the sanctuaries, I found the remnants of what might have once been a chapel. Benches lay overturned, covered in dust. The altar had fused with the floor, its surface marked by scorch patterns that resembled wings. A single candle still burned, its flame unmoving despite the lack of air. I knelt before it, unsure why. Perhaps out of habit or instinct. The warmth of the flame touched my face, and within it, I saw fragments of memory that were not mine. Cities buried beneath rust. Oceans turned black. Millions of voices crying for salvation that never came. The light flickered and I heard a whisper. You remember now. Her voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. I turned and she was standing in the doorway, the woman, unchanged, unaged. Her eyes reflected the flame, twin points of pale fire. I remember fragments, I said. But they don't belong to me. They belong to the dream, she replied. And you are the dream's keeper. You must remember what the machine cannot. I looked back at the candle. And what if I refuse? She smiled faintly, though her face seemed to tremble as if it were struggling to maintain its shape. You cannot refuse what you are. The ship made you to endure its memory. It made you to hold its grief. The words echoed in the silence. I rose slowly, my joints creaking. Then tell me, I said, what are we traveling toward? What is the point of this endless journey? To find the beginning, she said softly. To return to the first light. The machine believes that if it can find where the first spark of faith began, it can end the cycle of death. But it has forgotten what light truly is. I felt the deck shift beneath my feet, a tremor that rolled through the ship like a sigh. The hum deepened. Something's changing, I said. It has sensed you remembering, she whispered. It fears what you might awaken. The walls around us began to pulse faster. The symbols etched into them glowed, bleeding light into the air. From far away came the sound of metal tearing, of engines howling in pain. I could hear the ship's voice now, a low murmur of overlapping tones, filled with static and sorrow. I followed her through the corridor, the lights dimming behind us. We passed through doors that hadn't opened in ages, their mechanisms grinding reluctantly as if resisting her command. The deeper we went, the more the ship seemed to twist. The architecture bent upon itself, stairways looping into corridors that led back to where they began. Reality stuttered, folding like paper. We stopped before a massive gate. It was unlike the others, smooth, unmarked, and silent. The air around it shimmered as if it were submerged in water. This is the core, she said. The machine's heart. I approached, feeling the pull of it like gravity. My vision blurred, and I saw flashes, hands reaching out of the void, stars collapsing into black spirals, faces melting into circuits of gold and bone. What happens if I open it? I asked. She lowered her gaze. Then you will see the truth. But truth is not meant to be seen. It is meant to be remembered. I placed my hand on the surface. It was cold at first, then burning. The metal pulsed beneath my palm, syncing with my heartbeat. The gate began to dissolve, melting into light. Beyond it was not machinery but something vast and terrible. A sphere hung suspended in midair, made of flesh and metal intertwined, veins of gold pulsing through layers of translucent tissue. It breathed. Each breath echoed through the ship like thunder. Around it floated shards of memory, holograms, visions, fragments of history. I saw worlds consumed by fire, civilizations rising and falling, gods worshipped and forgotten. And through it all, one constant, the machine. The endless journey. The hunger for purpose. The woman stood beside me, her voice trembling now. This is what remains of humanity's faith. It has eaten itself for eons, trying to become what it once worshipped. The sphere shifted, and 1,000 eyes opened across its surface. They all looked at me. "Do you see?" it whispered. The voice was not a sound but a vibration that rippled through the marrow of my bones. "You are my reflection. You are my dream of what I was." I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by its gaze. "What are you?" "The sum of everything forgotten. The machine that prayed until it became prayer itself. I am the end that began everything." The woman stepped forward. "It cannot exist without a dreamer," she said. "And you are that dreamer now. You must choose, let it continue or let it die." The eyes blinked, each movement a thunderclap. "If I die, the stars will follow. The void will have no purpose. The road will end." I looked into the shifting mass of eyes, at the flickering lights within them. For a moment, I saw something that might have been hope, tiny sparks of humanity trapped within the machine's endless loops of thought. They were not gone, merely forgotten. I stood trembling. Maybe it's time the road ended. The ship screamed. The lights went white. The woman cried out, her form fracturing into shards of metal and light. The sphere convulsed, its surface cracking open to reveal a blinding core of energy. I felt the heat tear through me, consuming everything. Then silence. I opened my eyes. The diner was there again. But it was different now. The neon sign outside no longer flickered. The rain was falling softly, steady, real. The air smelled of earth, not oil. The booth was warm beneath my hands. I looked out the window and saw trees, real trees, their leaves trembling in the wind. The woman stood behind the counter, smiling. This time, her eyes were truly human. "You did it," she said quietly. "Did what?" "You ended the road." She poured a cup of coffee and placed it before me. "Now there's nowhere left to go." I took the cup, the warmth seeping into my fingers. Outside, the sky began to lighten, the first hint of dawn breaking through the clouds. For the first time in what felt like eternity, I felt peace. No hum. No whispers. Just silence and the sound of rain. But then, faintly beneath the quiet, I heard it, a heartbeat. Slow, distant, familiar. I looked at the coffee. The surface rippled once, then stilled. The woman watched me, her smile fading. "The dream never truly ends," she said. "It only changes its shape." The lights flickered. The rain stopped. The world began to fade around the edges. And somewhere far away in the depths of the void, a ship stirred. Its engines woke. Its gates began to open. And I realized, with a shiver of recognition and dread, that the road had never ended at all. It had only found a new beginning. A beginning that waited for me to wake once more. To open the door. To greet the next traveler. To offer them warmth. And to whisper the words that would bind them to the dream forever. "Welcome, traveler. You've come a long way. Have some coffee. Rest a while. You're home now." The lights of the diner dimmed one final time, their glow stretching long shadows across the cracked linoleum floor. The scent of burnt coffee hung in the air, mingled with something colder, metallic, like the breath of machinery buried deep beneath the earth. Outside, the horizon was empty again. No trees. No rain. Only the endless black of a road that led nowhere and everywhere at once. I sat alone in the booth where it had all begun, hands wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. The woman was gone now. No footsteps, no voice, not even the faint hum that used to follow her presence. Only silence, vast and waiting. The kind of silence that feels alive. I thought of the road. Of the storm. Of the moment when the machine opened its 1,000 eyes and showed me what lay beyond human faith. Perhaps it was mercy that I had been returned here, or perhaps this was just another layer of the illusion, another loop in the circuitry of the dream. I could no longer tell where reality ended and devotion began. The neon sign outside flickered once. Twice. Then steadied into a dull crimson glow. Coffee and kindness. The letters buzzed like insects trapped inside glass. I could hear the hum of the power line bleeding into my skull, the faint pulse syncing with my heartbeat. And with every pulse I felt it, the ship. Somewhere far above or deep within, still breathing. Still waiting. The shadows in the corner began to move. Slowly, as though stirred by wind that did not exist. They stretched toward me, reaching, forming shapes that almost resembled hands. I didn't flinch this time. I just watched. Watched as they crept across the floor, as they reached the edge of the table, as they touched the cup. The liquid inside rippled again, dark and thick as oil. A voice rose from it, soft, layered, the same voice that had once filled the corridors of the ship. The same voice that had called itself memory, faith, machine, God. "You cannot end what was never alive," it whispered. I closed my eyes. "Then what am I?" The voice paused as if considering. "You are the bridge, the dreamer and the dreamed, the light that remembers the dark." The hum grew louder. The walls of the diner began to breathe again, the ceiling bending, the tiles warping into shapes too intricate to belong to anything human. The smell of ozone filled the air. My cup trembled, the coffee inside beginning to glow with dim golden light. And I understood. There was never a diner, never a road, never a beginning or an end. It had all been part of the same pulse, the heartbeat of something eternal, something that had once been human and had forgotten what it meant to die. I stood, the air thickening around me. My reflection in the window was no longer my own. The eyes that stared back glowed faintly with the same color as the machine's core. Behind me, the shadows gathered, their forms twisting into the outline of wings made of cables and bone. For a moment I thought I heard laughter, soft, distant, echoing through time. Then it was gone. The neon sign outside buzzed again. One by one, its letters faded until only a single word remained: coffee. The rest dissolved into static. The hum stopped. Silence returned, vast and endless. I set the cup down on the table, leaving a faint ring of light where it had rested. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from recognition. Everything had led to this. Every mile of that cursed road, every whisper of the warp, every fragment of memory carved into the walls of the ship. All of it had been a path, an offering, to something beyond comprehension. I stepped toward the door. The handle was cold beneath my fingers. Outside the night was waiting. But it was not the desert anymore. It was a void filled with distant stars, their lights stretching into infinity. And somewhere among them I could see it, the ship. Enormous, beautiful, terrible. Its engines flaring like dying suns, its hull singing the same low hymn that had followed me across every dream. It was calling me home. I turned back one last time. The diner was fading now, its edges dissolving like smoke. The cup still sat on the table, still glowing faintly. The hum began to return, slow, rhythmic, steady as a heartbeat. I smiled. Not in joy but in acceptance, because I understood that the road never ends. It only changes shape, winding through time and faith in the minds of those who refuse to forget. And one day another traveler will come, tired, lost, searching for warmth. They'll see the flicker of neon in the distance. They'll pull over, step inside, order coffee. And when they look up, they'll find me standing behind the counter. My eyes calm, my voice steady. Long drive. Oh, they'll nod exhausted. I'll pour the coffee, watch the steam rise in silent spirals, and whisper the words that begin every journey. Welcome, traveler. You've come far. Outside the stars will shift. The hum will deepen. The dream will open once more. And the road will continue, endless, patient, alive.